Hi all, and thanks for being with me. I guess most of you are questioning whether DEI is dead here in Australia, given that most of you believe that we're not influenced by what happens in the United States. So I'm about to discuss that. But before I do, I'm going to talk about the Silk Road creator and the pardon offered to him by Donald Trump. So sit back and listen. Now, we've sort of gone over, and I guess many people have talked about the January 6th insurrectionists, abusers, violent and abusive people that Donald Trump has decided needed to be released. Not because he believes in any ideological foundation that says that these people were inappropriately charged and consequently had a jury decide that they were guilty, and also to ignore the fact that many of them admitted that they were guilty in the first place. So put all that aside, the fact is that the insurrection on January the 6th did not take place, and that Trump himself believes that because it didn't take place, therefore those people were unjustly sentenced to whatever sentences they got. Some of them got up to 25 years. Now, the most violent of those people have been released simply because, at the end of the day, he couldn't be bothered going through the 1,600 or so and deciding which one should and which one shouldn't. So let's just release them all. But the incident which I think probably needs to also be considered is the acquittal, or pardon, I should say, of the Silk Road creator. Now, this doesn't seem to be receiving as much publicity as it should, regretfully, because it is important to understand that because you might have a libertarian attitude towards life and believe that that you should have the right to do whatever you want to do in a libertarian society without the consequences of your actions, then clearly you would agree with Donald Trump. If Donald Trump understood what libertarian was in the first place. So I'm going to take you through an article which describes this particular case and help us to try and understand whether or not you believe that Trump did the right thing by releasing this particular guy. So the question then is, why did Trump pardon the Silk Road creator a decade after his life sentence? So the question we need to be asking is, who is this guy? So Trump declared a pardon for the founder of the underground illicit, now it's important to understand this, an illicit drugs marketplace, Silk Road, as part of a raft of sweeping announcements during the first 2 days of his new administration. Ross Ulbricht was sentenced to life in prison in 2015 after a high-profile prosecution that highlighted the role of the internet in illegal markets. Mr. Trump on Wednesday said in a post on his social media platform Truth Social that he had called Ulbricht's mother to deliver the news of his pardon. How thoughtful. It's interesting how Trump would probably be more inclined to call someone's mother like this than someone who was killed in a terrorist attack. The scum that worked to convict him was some of the same lunatics who were involved in the modern-day weaponization of government against me. So the bottom line here is that because Trump believes that the charging of all the insurrectionists, those people who violently invaded the Capitol on January 6, 2021, were unjustly sentenced, that this person also should be released simply because of all the lunatics who he sees as being the police, the prosecutors, the lawyers, all those people, FBI, all those people that were involved in appropriate prosecutions, particularly the FBI in this case. He said he was given two sentences plus 4 years, and Trump believes that was ridiculous. Mr. Trump has previously promised to help free Ulbricht during a speech in May last year at, of course, the Libertarian Party National Conference. libertarian activists who generally oppose criminal drug policies have long believed that US government investigators overreached in building their case against Silk Road. So be that as it may. But the important part was this one. Mr. Trump's interest in freeing the person behind a marketplace for dangerous and illicit drugs have, however, flown in the face of comments he made just hours before pardoning Albrecht. Earlier on Tuesday local time, the president delivered a scathing rebuke of countries like Canada, Mexico and China, who he accuses of facilitating the import of large amounts of the dangerous drug fentanyl into the United States. And it's worth noting that Albrecht, in this website that he had, this dark web site, he was selling drugs, he was selling guns, he was selling books on terrorism, and he was selling the opportunity for people to hire hitmen. So I don't know which one of those you agree with, but for me, a person who's involved in that sort of marketplace has committed a crime. The FBI thought so, the jury thought so, and he was sentenced accordingly. But according to Trump, this should not have gone to trial, that this man should be freed. I need to add that this site turned over $1 billion by providing these particular services. Now, if those services were legal, then just use the internet like the rest of us. Why go underground? The man's argument was that he had sold the site, it had been taken over by other people, and they did some of these terrible things. Well, apparently the jury disagreed with that notion, and he was duly sentenced. So that's that story. Now, let me know in the comment section below what you think, because I would like to know whether or not you agree. Oops, I've just changed that. Didn't mean to do that. I would like to know whether you agree that his sentence was appropriate or not. And let me know by subscribing and so forth down below. Now, the other issue that I do want to talk about is DEI Dead, and I'm going to have a conversation with you about that because the Sky News, in their wisdom, presented an opinion piece yesterday that made me wonder about where this is going to go here in Australia. And people often ask me, and I've mentioned this many times, that the reality is that we are influenced by what happens in the United States. And it is regrettable that the moron, the clown that the United States has as their president, has such influence over what it is we may be thinking, what it is that we may be doing, and looking at the United States and saying, well, if they can do this, then there's every possibility that we could import those ideas into Australia and make them a part of who we are. Because after all, Trump is fabulous. Trump is all-knowing, all-wise, omniscient, and that anything that he says can be done in the US clearly could be done here. Forgetting often that we have a different culture, that we have a different government system than what they do. Our politicians see things differently. And to some extent, Australians would say no to many of the things that happen in the US. Put that aside for a moment, that there are people in Australia who believe that DEI, which is diversity, equity and inclusion, is something that should be abolished. Now, I would argue that to have a culture which is diverse, a corporate culture we're talking about, we have a culture that is in our community that is extremely diverse. It's not all white. It is a mixture of white, black, brown, different religious groups, different cultural backgrounds, different foods. It's an enriched culture as a result of all of that. But what has been discovered over the years has been that particular culture has not been reflected in the workplace. And so organisations and governments have decided that perhaps some changes need to be made. Maybe we need more diversity. And what they did discover is that when you add diversity to a workplace, you get a better quality working environment. So you need, we should stop excluding people because they were simply of a different colour, they have a different race, because they were disabled, because they had a different mental attitude towards life generally than what the other people did. So we needed to find ways to be able to break through some of those barriers that prevented really good people from taking on roles within government and within corporations in the workplace in general. And so DEI came about as an opportunity to be able to do that. In order to do that, many organisations employed officers that were DEI officers to ensure that the culture within those organisations changed in accordance with those three core principles. Now, to argue, I think, that it's been a bad thing doing that is really hard to do. And if there's anybody here who would argue that, I'd be most interested to know what you have to say. And again, please put a comment down below if you've got some sort of argument to say that. And I want to back it up with something. Let me know that you specifically think that having a diverse and equal culture is a bad thing. You go to, are you employing people based on just simply mediocrity, maybe? Maybe it's not a merit-based system like you believe that it should be. And what does a merit-based system look like anyway? And those days have gone, I think, where, we're employing people because they went to the same school as we did, because they're the same colour that we are, because they have the same religious beliefs that we do, that we need to be completely diverse around all of those issues. And as a result of that, I believe the culture within organisations has improved. If you disagree with that, let me know what organisation you specifically think and provide the evidence has suffered as a result of DEI. Let me know. I'll be most interested. But the guys on Sky News, and particularly this little wombat at the beginning here, let's have a look at what they say about this, and we'll talk about it as we go through it.
Now, we're saying all this stuff is going out of fashion. Survival Day, this is done, right? We have moved on. Woke is starting to die, and it's certainly dying over in America. One of the first things...
See, the interesting comment, we have moved on, right? No, we haven't. Just because you believe that we should move on doesn't necessarily mean that we have. Have you moved on? No, you haven't, because you're still talking about this stuff in the way that you do, and frankly, I don't.
Things Donald Trump has done with his newfound presidency, second time round, is to get rid of all the DEI employees in the public service in America. Now, it should be noted that they are actually on leave at the moment, but the plan is that they will all be put out of work eventually. Their departments will...
So these are the people within government departments in particular where, that's all that Trump has control of. So it's only talking about government departments. But nevertheless, there are people employed by each department that manage and look after DEI, and they're the people that are being put on leave.
Will be pulled apart. Their services are no longer required because woke is dead in America.
Oh, for God's sake. Woke is not dead. Woke, whatever you believe woke will be. So let's talk about it as progressiveness. Let's talk about this notion around wokeness as being more about an opportunity to look for ways by which the community themselves can better can gain from government involvement. So let's look to those people that are unemployed, those people that are on benefits, those people that are disabled. Let's look for policies that will help them. Look for policies that will help the homeless, those people that find it difficult buying a home, young people in particular, educational opportunities. Let us look to opportunities to be able to provide free higher education, free daycare for families that are unable to afford it. Let's look for all of those opportunities, and let's stop calling them woke. Let's just call them opportunities. Let's stop calling places where, or ideas where a person is gay or trans. Let's stop talking about those ideas and the inclusiveness that should fit around all of that. Let's start calling them for what they are, which are appropriate ideas that are about building a community that is equitable. And the thing about, I think, DEI is that primarily it's about issues that make white people, feel uncomfortable. So having a trans person in your midst, for example, may make you feel uncomfortable. Well, frickin' deal with your uncomfortableness. That person has just as much right, has just as much expertise as somebody else that might fill that job. Feel uncomfortable. They might be feeling uncomfortable with an Indigenous person working for them. Well, learn to deal with that. As often is the case, and we'll come back to this, I guess, but often it's the case that some men may just feel uncomfortable with a woman as their boss. Deal with it. Deal with it. But that's what DEI is about, is finding ways to manage to deal with that stuff. And it's not until we start making people feel uncomfortable that we will ever make a change. If everything just remains the status quo, or at least if everything remains white, Christian, white nationalist, and has a racist view on the world, then we're not going to make any progress at all. And if you want to call that DEI, then fine. Or if you want to call it woke, then that's fine. But in actual fact, it isn't. It's progress. And that's what we need. These people, I believe, want to hold this back. They want to prevent us from progressing in a realistic and substantive way. So, following on.
The order that has been sent out to staff, telling them what's going on, they're going to send an agency-wide notice to employees informing them of the closure and asking employees if they know of any efforts to disguise these programs by using coded or imprecise language.
And I love this bit. I mean, this is really about, this has taints of, how could I put it? This is taints of authoritarianism, autocracy, where you dob on those people that you believe are contravening what the government is asking you, or your leader, in this case Trump, is asking you to do. This is dangerous stuff.
Send a notification to all employees or DEIA officers that they are being placed on paid administrative leave effective immediately as the agency takes steps to close/end all DEI initiatives, offices and programs, and take down all outward-facing media such as websites, social media accounts, etc. of DEIA officers. It is over. DEI is dead in America. And of course, we talked last week about the...
But it's not... Well... To say, this is my bloody issue, to say that it's dead in America simply because of something stupid that Trump's put out does not make it dead. What it makes, it's putting it on hold, it's inappropriate, it's unhelpful, and there will be pushback. Now, let's wait. And I think there's an interesting thing about the Trump administration now is that with the immigration issue and the states now pushing back against the deportation of immigrants, and that the blindness that sits around Republicans generally around all of those issues and releasing the J6 people, and so it goes on. People will. This is only day 3 here in Australia. People will start pushing back, and we will be pushing back against some of the stuff that they're talking about here on Sky.
The fact that Facebook now has dismantled their DEI policies. Lots of companies now are walking away from DEI because they've realised they don't.
And when I look at these three clowns, I can see that Sky have done away with their DEI policies, if ever they had any at all.
Don't have to suck up to anyone anymore. It was always window dressing. Oh, this concern, we must have lots of minorities. It's only because that's what they thought the rest of corporate America was doing and what the rest of the corporate world was doing. And now that people actually feel...
So we shouldn't... So what this guy's saying, this little muppet, is that we shouldn't have... we should be including minorities at all. That everybody that works for Sky News, Murdoch Press, should be white, and they should all have the same religious background, same values as these people, as disgusting as some of those values are, but they all should be the same. This is what it's saying.
Emboldened to say, no, we think that's a load of crap. Everyone else is coming out and saying it's a load of crap. Who would have thought that this was never real in the first place? And something else Trump has done quite rightly, something I would like to see happen in this country, and Peter Dutton has talked about this, that if and when he becomes Prime Minister, he will only stand in front of the Australian flag. Well, Donald Trump now says that on American government properties, be they in America or...
Okay, so that's probably enough of this little wombat. And so they go on to have further this discussion around DEI. But my point is that, if you've got a disability... you're unable to walk, need a wheelchair. Before we changed our views around that and your worthiness to work, how many of those people felt hopeless and helpless? The people that are gay, openly gay, how difficult have they found it to work given their version of sexuality in the past? Really, really difficult. If you're a trans person, even harder. If you have an intellectual disability, how difficult has it for you to find work? I can remember a time when I used to work with people who worked in shelters. So they were places where they were paid $1 an hour to do the most menial of tasks because they were intellectually challenged. It was wrong. It's still wrong. And those people should be paid a decent wage for decent work. There are many, many different people who see the world differently, but who are discriminated against because they aren't offered the opportunities that other people are offered, like these clowns on Sky News. That we need to find a way. My view is that DEI isn't dead, far from it. That because you choose to turn a blind eye to something, or you send out a piece of paper saying that all DEI officers in the United States government have to be dispensed with, doesn't mean it's dead. It does mean that they're trying to get rid of it, and that it may tend to happen here in Australia as well if people like these guys on Sky are propagating these particular issues. But we need to push back. As I've said many times before, the purpose of my channel and a lot of other progressive channels is to push back about these terrible things that we see happening in our community and the communities around the world, that we certainly need to identify and have a voice. Frankly, it never matters to me how many people view my videos. What does matter to me is the fact that I have an opportunity to be able to present my thoughts in the way that I do. And if you disagree with it, fine. If you agree with me, that's fantastic. If you can share some of my views to other people, then that is fantastic as well. So please do. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.